Well, there you have it, folks. Bigfoot call or fat girl fart? You make the call. Welcome back, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast. That's right. I am the host of this mess, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and we are coming to you live from Northern California tonight. Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. Glad you all could join us tonight. That's right. Tonight we are talking about Bigfoot bones. That's right. And the Bigfoot bones. Where do they go? Not really sure where they go, but they certainly go somewhere. There we go. That's kind of what I was looking for, but I don't think so. That's still not right. No, 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 no. Up there. Oh, okay, whatever. It's just going to be one of those evenings. Hello, everybody out there. So, yeah, Bigfoot bones. Where exactly do they go? There are a number of theories out there on Bigfoot and what happens to their dead. And we'll kind of investigate a few of those tonight. One of the, I guess we can kind of start out with a little bit of list of what people believe happens to Bigfoot when they die. Some people believe that Bigfoot actually eat their dead. Now, if they ate their dead, that doesn't necessarily explain what happens to their bones, but some people out there actually believe that Bigfoot eat their dead. Now, in some cases, bears eat bears, and deer have been known to eat human flesh on occasion. So, it really does get to be that way. But for the most part, you'd still have the bones left over if you just ate the flesh of the animal. And you can find those bear bones in the woods or where things have been eating on them. So some people believe that they eat their dead. Other people believe that they bury their dead. There's a number of reports. I don't know exactly how accurate they are. There's a couple of Bigfoot campfire stories where people talk about seeing Bigfoot bury the bones or bury the bodies of other Bigfoot, which would make a lot of sense as to why we never find any of the bones. Some of the theories out. Another theory that's out there is that Bigfoot just kind of disappear into the neversphere and turn into energy and pure light, as long as your heart is pure, and magically turns into energy and disappears off of the planet completely because he was never here to begin with. I don't know. And then there are other people who believe that, that the Bigfoot is, take their bodies and put them in caves, and, that somehow there's going to be some magical finding of thousands of Bigfoot bones in a cage. So we'll kind of explore some of those ideas tonight. I guess we can start with the last one first. The idea that Bigfoot would bury their dead in caves, kind of goes back to long before we were even human. And we've talked about this on several occasions that, Homo naledi was one of the first human type species. It goes back almost all the way to Lucy. And, they were these little 2.5 foot, 3.5 foot upright walking monkey people that used fire and drugged their dead into caves and threw them down into a pit. And the reason that we know this is because we found the pit, and they have found lots and lots of bones down there from different individuals. There are scorch marks all along the top of the caves, along the tunnel systems leading back into the cave to where the pit was, making it obvious that whoever was burying their dead there were using torches to light the way, which would make a whole lot of sense. But Bigfoot bones, we have spelunkers here, people who specify in cave diving and cave crawling, and there's a lot of caves out there that aren't explored. I'm sure there's little crevices and caverns and this type of thing that aren't going to be out there. But even with the major systems, you would think that someone would be able to actually find a location where Bigfoot would have buried their bones in the caves by now. I think especially if it was one particular like graveyard type cave thing where they would drag all their dead The smell would probably lead you to it. Just like the hominid creatures, they used that same pit for years and years and years and years and years. Some of the bones were anywhere from 400 to 500 years in difference from the stuff that they had found in other parts of the pit. So obviously, over a long, long period of time, these monkey people were dragging their dead and throwing them into this pit, probably to keep the wild predators away from the rest of the tribe, the group, whatever you want to call them. Dead things do tend to bring in other things that want to eat dead things. So it would make sense as to why you would want to get rid of the bodies. But, again, here, especially in America, we've yet to discover any of those locations that might actually hold Bigfoot bodies in them at all. There's a couple of reports out there where people have said that they have found Bigfoot bones in caves, yet when looking further at them or further study goes with them, they're usually found out to be some kind of a bear, which, without flesh on it and without hair on it, it's kind of difficult to tell the difference between a bear paw and a human hand or a human bone, human forearm, simply because the anatomy of it is pretty close. Other than the fingers actually go backwards on a bear, the thumb is on the outside instead of the inside, which is another thing that can usually give away the proper identity to the types of creatures that you find in caves. And now, let's consider a little bit about, burying their dead. I know there was a Bigfoot Campfire Story that I had told, that I had dug up from somewhere, or had been told the story about sheep farmers who had to shoot at a Bigfoot for some reason and wounded it pretty badly. And then when they went to go track it down, it had died, and its family had found it and drug it up on a hillside and dug a pit and put the body in it and covered it back over, and was having some kind of a weird ceremony, not necessarily a ceremony, but some kind of a weird gathering over the corpse. Now, I'm not saying that that's not possible, that they're not intelligent enough to mourn. I mean, elephants have been known to mourn. Wild turkey, for God's sakes, have been known to draw, to run around in weird circles around one of their dead. So, there's definitely some kind of credence to, a ceremony with a Bigfoot burial. But again, one would think we would discover such a thing. Considering the alpine regions where they're mostly seen during the summertime months, it would probably be difficult to find one that was buried up on the up at 10,000 feet somewhere. But would it really be difficult to find one if you would think that there would be more reports of people actually seeing Sasquatch digging graves and putting their dead people or dead bodies or dead members into it? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there are other things that dig holes and kind of drag dead things into them and cover them back over. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely impossible. The whole ritual thing, I'm sure that there's some kind of a loss felt. I'm sure that it's probably conveyed, in a particular way when it would come to that. But we're not even sure if these things live in family units or whether they're just lone and lone males where the females have a family unit. Is it a matriarch society? I mean, we really, really, really don't know. After all these years of investigating this stuff and trying to get closer to them, the only thing that I have realized is that I know exactly nothing more than I knew 20 years ago. And damn it, it's frustrating. I know a whole lot more about what is not Bigfoot, and a whole lot more about what are hoaxes, and a whole lot about what can't possibly be Bigfoot than I actually know about what Bigfoot is. And I'll be the first one to actually admit that in public. I definitely don't have the answers, but I definitely have a good train of thought on how to avoid such a thing. Now, I do want to bring up one thing here. Let's go ahead. We do have a live Quasi from the Quasi Master himself tonight. It's fantastic. Darren Lee of Bigfoot Hoaxers 2.0. He's actually started a wiki for Sasquatch called Squatchopedia. And if you haven't checked it out, you really should go out. I mean, I'm not affiliated. He hasn't asked me to say anything about it or anything. But Squatchopedia is really getting to be a wiki for Sasquatch information, and he's got videos of old videos of stuff that's really not found anywhere else. He's been archiving sites, he's been archiving videos, and he's been building this Squatchopedia site for quite a long time. Our information, the Squatchers Lounge podcast, and the old Reverend Jeff will go up there as soon as I send him over our information to be under the podcast section. But yeah, for sure, if you haven't checked out Squatchopedia, you should definitely go over there and check it out and start going through some of the things, because there's really a lot of good hoax information and a lot of, like the Harley Hoffman video is there, and that's getting harder and harder to find. If you don't know what the Harley Hoffman video is, check it out. It's one of those Bigfoot videos that's still up in the air, that's never been proved as a hoax, but there are definitely some questions about it. And so that's just one of the things that's up there, and it gives the background on people like Mike Sells and Tom Biscardi and a lot of the things you should avoid while looking into the Bigfoot world. So with that, let's go ahead and take us a moment, and we will give us a brand new Quasi Theory from a quasi scientist while I cover up Mr. Squawks-a-Lot in the background. And now, Quasi Theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Vaccinations and the divine cow. So, as we all remember from our high school science classes, the guy who invented vaccinations was Edward Jenner. He did it in 1796. He was a country doctor living in Berkeley. No, not that Berkeley. Not the California Berkeley. That didn't exist until 1878. This Berkeley is first mentioned historically in 824 of the Common Era, so it has dibs on the name. The whole thing gets better, then nastier, then heavenly, and ultimately sillier. It is said that Jenner, finding a milkmaid with a cowpox pustule, scraped some pus from it. He then grabbed a local young lad, about 8 years old, scratched the kid's skin, and rubbed the pus in it. Cowpox is pretty mild in humans. The kid recovered in a few days. Jenner then grabbed some pus from a local with full-blown smallpox and nailed the kid with it, using the same procedure. The kid didn't even get a little sick. Neither did his next of kin. This fully established that Jenner's invention actually worked, as well as that Jenner was a full-blown sociopath. The words vaccine and vaccination are derived from variole vaccinae, smallpox of the cow, the term devised by Edward Jenner, who both developed the concept of vaccines and created the first vaccine to denote cowpox. At least Wikipedia says so. So, how does Jenner come up with the name vaccinae? It had already become scientifically vogue to give everything Latin names. Well, Latinicious names anyway. The Latin word for cow is vacca, hence Jenner's invention of vaccination. Vacca is also the Sanskrit word for cow, usually shortened to Vak. Vak is also the proper name for the divine cow, who is one of the many forms of the goddess Saraswati takes. She is the goddess of divine wisdom, the provider of creative thoughts. She gives form to the formless sea of creativity. Vak, the divine cow, provides milk to all who need nourishment. Vak is also the Sanskrit word for voice and speech. The word voice comes into English from the Latin word voce. Both words are derived from Vak. She also, apparently, incidentally, provides vaccinations. Now here comes the silly part. Jenner said he sometimes used pus from horses with horsepox. It worked as well as cowpox pus. He could have called his invention equination instead. from the Latin for horse, equus, but then he would have just been horsing around. You may read the text of this and indeed many more of these on my blog at baidin.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
ByDean.com. And don't forget it.
I'm here to do one thing, is to bring one of these creatures back. I don't want to talk right now.
So don't get mad.
Just keep the camera off right now, okay? I said I don't want to talk. You got it? Joan, give me a Snapple.
Joan, get me a Snapple. All right, let's go ahead and say hello to everybody out here hanging out in the Hangout tonight live with me. Let's see who's out here tonight. Well, hello, Miss Natalie Smith. I'm glad you are out there with us. I hope Miss Wheezy is with you, and if not, I hope she's feeling well. There, Reverend Dean Cooper himself. That's right, the Quasi Theorist. Mr. Lance Windsor, the Great White Investigator. Great White North Investigator. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be racist. Let's see here. Mr. Shane Barber, how you doing, buddy? Glad you are feeling well enough to come and join us tonight. And there is Aaron and Mary Duncan. That's right. Yeah, you got a portal. I'm sure. Yeah, you opened my portal at the Pie a lot last year. June's coming. We are getting ready. I am surviving and getting stronger every day. Ken. Man, I got to get the doctor to look at that. How you doing, buddy? I'm glad you're out there with us tonight. Let's see here. Rolling on down the line. Frank G. Frank is like the king of pets, man. And that blue tarantula was like, what? Seriously. How do they taste? Jeremy Crotio. How you doing there, champ? Glad you are out there with us as well. Moving on down the line. Mr. Don Reif, the Viking. Hey there, sir. Glad you are getting back to good health again. Now you can pick up the pieces of your life. I know how hard it is, man. I'm trying to pick up mine. Let's see here. There's some other people. James the Grower's checking in with us live tonight. Hey, buddy. Glad you could join us. All right, down here in the bottom of the well. If you haven't said hi to me, I don't know you're here. So I really can't say hi to you. Collier Williams is out there, I'm sure. He never talks in the chat anymore because he's just too good for us, but he listens. And my son, Sean, I'm sure he's out there somewhere too. If not, he'll catch it after work. And here we are. We're at the bottom of the list, and I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did speak up, I'll be sure to give you a shout out. That's right. Get me a Snapple. So, all right, let's go ahead and get back to the thought of it. You know, where exactly do the Bigfoot bones go? Hey, there he is. He is quiet these days, but he is still hanging out. Where did the bones go? If a Bigfoot just died in the woods and natural, just the natural way of things take over, it doesn't last very long. I mean, literally, it's not going to last a month. It's definitely not going to last 2 months. How long would something like that before it would be scattered into the wind by the animals? I had a conversation or an attempted conversation with somebody in the California Bigfoot group this week because she had posted a picture of these jawbones that were wedged into this tree, and she was somehow trying to allure to the fact that it had to be a Bigfoot that did that because it's been off limits to people since the pandemic. And, they were wedged in there so tight and so high that nothing else but a Bigfoot could have really done it. And, my question to her was, or my statement to her was, I said, ground squirrels will drag stuff like that up into a tree. Gray squirrels will do the same thing to gnaw on a tree. Rats. Well, these are huge. These are like a big elk. They're definitely too big for a gray squirrel to drag out. I'm like, bones are light. They don't weigh anything. But okay. So I asked her, I was like, were there tracks that led up to this tree and away from this tree? Was there suspicious hair on a limb that somehow, lent you to the idea that a Bigfoot would have put these jawbones in a tree? And it's like, porcupines. There's a lot of things that will drag stuff up into a tree to gnaw at it like that. And it just, she couldn't take the idea that something natural or normal would be able to do such a thing, that the only thing possible was Bigfoot, but she had no ability to explain her thought process as it leading to a Sasquatch. She just simply wanted us to take it as gospel because I said so. What else could have put them in there so tight? I tried to pull them out and I couldn't. Well, as the Vikings say, grow stronger. Who knows how long they had been back there? Some kind of a predator could have, dragged the whole skull up in there and been eaten at it. It's very, very crazy to think that that only a Sasquatch and a Sasquatch only would do such a thing. Now, as long as I've been in the woods, which is my entire life, I just turned 48 this year, so we'll give me the first 4 years of being chaperoned. But pretty much from 5 on, I've been in the woods by myself a ton. I've never found a dead black bear. Well, that's not true. We did actually find one dead black bear here in California. I believe it was like 3 years ago. But it literally took me 45 years of being in the woods in bear territory everywhere, and took me that long to actually find a to find a dead bear carcass. And the only reason we found it was because it was stinking to high heaven. It had only been there a few days. It was just starting to stink. It was just starting to get bloated. So we marked it. We marked the GPS on it because it was way off grid. There wasn't any reason for cars to be out there. I mean, it really was by one of our investigation areas where people just don't go. I mean, and we know that people don't go there because we keep track of it. We have cameras and stuff up all over the place. We went back to get it after the winter season. We went back up after the snow had melted. We went in with an ATV to try and collect the carcass because we didn't want to get it while it was all stinky. And it was gone. There were some tufts of hair and some skin laying around in a couple of small places. You might have been able to find smaller hand bones or smaller foot bones, but even the big ass skull was gone. Gone. That's all I really wanted was the skull. I should have cut it off and taken it with me, but I didn't have a bear tag. It was out of season and it was already dead, and it just would have been a big pain in the ass. That's why we left it there. But literally in a matter of 4 months, and 3 months of that had 10 feet of snow on it. That whole bear carcass was gone. And honestly, that's kind of the way I've got to lean towards it, is feeling that that's got to be the deal. Is Sasquatch die, a lonely existence in a place, long away from people, and their bodies just return to the earth, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. That's kind of the way I feel about it. I don't really know for sure, because we haven't found any evidence as to what they do with their dead bodies, with their dead specimens. But boy, I sure would like to find one. Now, some people were asking earlier on, what's the deal with this skull? This skull was obviously purported to be a Bigfoot skull, and found, and it was actually found in a cave. And of course, upon further inspection, it's a carving. It's a carving out of rock. There's absolutely no bone there to it at all. The guy that claimed that it was a Bigfoot skull said that it was fossilized. It was, a Bigfoot skull from 1 million years ago. But I've always liked this thing. Like, I would like to have one of these things on my shelf. There was a company that was recreating these, and they were for sale for a little while, but I don't know how many of them they made. It was really pretty neat. the skull itself is just huge. I mean, it's really really big. Speaking of huge, oh my god. There's a picture, there's a game cam picture of a smiling Bigfoot. No, not really a smiling Bigfoot, but kind of a grinning Bigfoot going around out there that was taken from somebody's new game cam here in 2021. And it is an obvious Photoshop of Doug Hudson's Patty bust recreation that you see with Dr. Meldrum on it a lot in advertisements and stuff. And they literally just took that picture and doctored it up to make blurred it all out, made it look all crappy, washed it all out, and put some game cam tags on the bottom of it and tried to pass it off as a new Bigfoot found out in the wild. So if you come across that one, definitely don't fall for it. Absolutely, Don is right about the book, The Eaters of the Dead. The movie was called The 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas. The book was a whole lot better than the movie was, but you can get the gist of the book by watching the movie in 2 hours because the book was really big and long, and I'm dyslexic. But yeah, I can't possibly lift this. Grow stronger. And that's the Viking logic, that's kind of the way things worked. And with that, guys, I guess that's going to wrap up our discussion on just where did the bones go? I don't really know. I don't really have the answer to most of that stuff, but I'd honestly think that like everything else, they die and the critters eat them. Just like if you and I were to die up in the woods, the critters would come and eat us too. So I do have a nice Bigfoot campfire story to go along with you guys tonight. And it's a little bit of a longer one. I believe it has to do with a dude who has a dog named Paco, which really is one of the top requested Bigfoot campfire stories. So give a listen to that tonight. I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate it more than you guys actually know. I'm health-wise, I'm getting bigger and stronger. I'm really, really trying every day. The weight's staying off of me. I'm taking my pills, and I get to see a doctor now in May. Yeah, you'd think I'd have seen a doctor by now, but no, that didn't work out so well. Lester, Bigfoot Exploration, is checking in as well. Hello there, Jonathan. Glad you are with us. All right, guys. Well, enjoy this Bigfoot campfire story, and we will see you next week. Welcome to another edition of Real Bigfoot Encounters with Reverend Jeff. This week's story comes to us from deep within the wilds of the vast North Florida Ocala National Forest. A young hiker attempting to cross the entire forest has a run-in with a creature unlike anything he's ever heard of before. Could this be the Bigfoot of legends? Let's hear his story and find out. My name is John C., and I was an avid hiker. I lived near the ocean in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and in the spring of my 18th birthday, I decided to hike across Florida, just me and my Chihuahua, Paco, a hiking pack, and enough gear to make us comfy each night. Our first few days out were pretty normal. We hiked from park to park, set up a hammock overnight, and moved on the next day. No one even noticed we were there. It was about the 5th day when we arrived at the edge of the Ocala National Forest. I'd ordered maps of the park long before I ventured out from home, as I knew people had gotten lost, never to be seen again over the decades in the park. We'd been packing in along Route 44, which led from the East Coast basically right into the West Coast along that route, and it cut right through the middle of the forest for many miles. I figured we'd be in the park for at least 4 nights before crossing the nearly 70 miles of dense, really unforgiving territory. But this wasn't our first rodeo. Paco and I made a short distance into the forest that day, so we posted up near a trail in the afternoon. I figured we could get some good rest and push off early the next day, hoping to cover 15 miles. I set up my hammock and started a small campfire, cooked up some Chef Boyardee for me and Paco. Yeah, I know it's bad for us, but only brought a few cans to enjoy. The rest was dry dog food and MRE packs. Oh, joy. Well, we sat along a log a lot that I drug over near the fire pit. We ate up like it was steak fillets. The night was so quiet, it was kind of spooky. But what was there to fear? I had my fearless Paco at my side. I let the fire die down, and I picked up Paco, and we settled into the hammock for some sleep. I was awakened to a strange noise at about 3 in the morning. I swear, it sounded like a tree was falling or something was grunting while tearing up in the brush about 30 yards outside of our camp. We couldn't see what was there, but could have been anything from a bear to a wild boar. At this point, maybe even a panther. Soon after, though, everything was quiet again. My nerves settled, but we went back to sleep. I awoke to a beautiful day. The birds were singing. The wind was blowing. So I packed us up and away we went. I decided to walk out past the area that the noise had come from that night. I discovered the strangest thing. A tree twisted and broken, but not at the ground, nearly 5 feet up the trunk. It surely didn't look natural, and all the grass around the tree looked as if a football team had been running blocking drills around it for hours, just all smashed down. I decided it'd be best to move on as the daylight was burning, and the further I got from this, the better I'd feel about it. I took a route that led us past Alexander Springs and led over towards Buck Lake, hoping they'd be able to fish that night when we arrived. Sadly, some weather moved in late in the afternoon, so I set up a tarp and hung the hammock to wait out the storm deep off trail in a place one would hope not to be found. The rain set in, the wind picked up, the darkness soon set. There was no hope for a fire, everything was just too wet. Just about 9 o'clock, the rain finally stopped, but the clouds were so thick and the forest was cloaked in a darkness that your eyes just couldn't pierce. Paco was shivering, and for that matter, so was I, and I could feel something just wasn't right. Something out there. I knew it for sure. I could hear it, huffing and puffing in the darkness as it seemed to pace around our spot. Paco let out a loud bark, and for whatever reason, whatever it was, snorted back. And then it seemed to bark right back at Paco in a far deeper tone. Paco pulled back in fear for a moment, and then he lost his ever-loving mind. Paco jumped from my arms and charged off into the darkness, barking and snarling like nothing I'd ever seen him do before. He was quickly out of my sight and seemingly lost in the darkness without me. My heart sank into the pit of my guts when I heard him whimper and yelp in pain from the darkness, and that's when I lost it too. I picked up a large branch in one hand and grabbed my bowie knife in the other, and out I went screaming into the woods where I had heard my best friend. One moment I'm He-Man, and the very next moment I was as terrified as I'd never been before. Right in front of me stood a hair-covered giant, as dark as the night, snarling and whooping at me like a rabid dog on a fresh kill. Just to his side was Paco. He was laying in a heap near a root ball of a fallen down tree, and I charged at the beast with everything I had. I swung the branch as hard as I could, but the monster just swatted it away like it was nothing to fear. The branch went flying from my hand, and the pain stung deep into my palm, as if I just struck a mailbox filled with concrete with a baseball bat. So I lurched forward with the bowie knife, and the blade struck his arm as he went to defend, and the blade pierced it, and he jerked back and shrieked in pain, and then anger. It charged at me, knocking me to the ground at what seemed like its waist. It was so tall, and I smacked my head on a tree root and passed out for a bit. The next thing I knew, I awoke. 10 hours had passed. It was morning again, and there by my side was Paco, keeping me warm and very much alive. When I stirred, he woke up, wagged his tail, and slowly stood up. He yelped in pain for a moment as I started to rise. I felt faint at first, but my strength returned. I took a quick look around and found giant footprints all around the area and what looked like some kind of nest made out of pine boughs. Could it be that we just happened to hunker down on its den? Could my luck really be that horrible? I quickly gathered up what gear I could find, and I showed Paco the fastest way out to the road. I'd immediately flagged down the first car I saw, and I begged them to take us to the ranger station. The poor lady that stopped was grossed out by my looks. I hadn't realized I had a head wound, and half of my head was covered in blood. Nancy was her name. She quietly asked me what happened. What was I supposed to say? The truth? No way. So I told her I was intact in my camp while I slept, but I never saw who did it. The ranger station was about 20 minutes away, and we arrived pretty quickly, as I think she was afraid of me, because the moment I stepped out of the truck and grabbed my pack, she peeled off in her truck without looking back. I stepped up to the ranger station, and when I got to the front door, I caught a glimpse of the shape I was in and realized that had what scared Nancy so badly. The ranger on duty noticed me and came to the door. He rushed over, opened it, let Paco and I inside. He grabbed my pack as I made my way over to the bench, and he called for an ambulance and a local county sheriff right away. He then asked what happened, and I actually told him the truth. His eyes got as wide as saucers as I let the details unfold to him, so much so that at one point he pointed out and said, "I knew it," to which I asked, of course, "What the hell do you mean?" He said, "I knew Bigfoot was real. That's what you ran into. Where exactly did it happen?" Ranger Tom brought over a map, and I circled the spot as close of a guess as I could make. He then folded up the map and put it in his coat pocket before anyone arrived. Ranger Tom told me frankly that while I should tell the truth that I had been attacked, it would be wise to just claim it happened while you slept. You didn't see who did it like you did with Nancy. I thought to myself, that's what I should have told Ranger Tom, too. Well, the medic arrived and he cleaned up my wound. He asked what happened, and I gave him the same story I told Nancy. And Ranger Tom said that was the story that I told him as well. It turned out my wound wasn't all that bad. I didn't need to go to the hospital. The deputy sheriff showed up next, and after talking to Ranger Tom and Medic Pete, he came over and asked me to tell him what happened. For just a moment, just that fleeting microsecond, I wanted to blurt out, "I was attacked by Bigfoot, you schmuck," but I gave him the short version as well. They called for my uncle to drive out from the beach to pick me up. About an hour later, Uncle Matt was there. He loaded my gear into the trunk of his car and put Paco into the back seat. He helped me out to the car, never asked why I didn't call my father. We rode halfway home in silence, and I was the one that started to talk. I started out with, "Well, you won't believe this story, but it is the truth." I recounted the events to him the best I could manage to recall, and Uncle Matt only asked one thing of me. He says, "I need a description of the beast." I told him it was nearly 7 feet tall, very wide at the shoulders with a head that set deep on top with no neck. It narrowed at the waist like a bodybuilder, which led to big, powerful legs with strange proportions to the knees. The arms seemed to be super strange as well, as if the bone from the shoulder to the elbow was a good 1/3 longer than it should be, making it swing low on the body close to that odd knee. Hair so black it seemed to disappear into the night, long arms, and then shorter at the hips. Yet what I remember most is the face, which is the last thing I saw as I fell to the ground as it charged me. A cone-shaped head, deep, wide-set eyes, pure black. It had a hint of brown around the iris. A big rounded nose and low-slung jaw with what seemed to be was on a hinge as it was screaming. It opened so widely I could smell its foul breath. "Is that enough?" I asked, to which he replied, "Yes. Boy, that's quite enough. I believe you. Anyone with such a story had better have gotten a good look at whatever knocked him to the ground. I know there's creatures out there we haven't seen in modern times, that there's all the same the Seminole legends go back a couple 100 years. You just had the worst luck hunkering down near its den. I'm just glad the two of you were okay." Uncle Matt agreed with me that my parents should get the short story, and my mother will worry to death anytime I leave the house. I fell down. I landed on Paco. We got help. The end. That was the story I told for years to protect myself from ridicule. Well, no more will I hide. It happened to me. It could happen to you. I no longer hike in the woods. This poor guy had the bad luck of claiming territory that wasn't his. His brush with the monster nearly ended his days with another real Bigfoot encounter. Thanks for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff. May the Squatch be with you.